Of the Islamic Front and Imam Yasin Abu Bakr, very grateful to be able to speak with you all to highlight this situation that has been going on for some time in terms of discussing the fate of the 5 TNT nationals incarcerated in Venezuela right now. But I want to ask, what is the condition of the men in question?
Presently, as we speak, they have embarked on a hunger strike. Today make it 14 days since they have gone on that hunger strike. They are becoming very weak and their health is deteriorating a lot. Doctors have visited them, on occasions to check on their health and so on. But there is one particular doctor who is attached to the tribunal. The tribunal is a three-judge tribunal that sits above the court system there in Venezuela. So this particular doctor has to pay them a visit, and he has to make an assessment of their health and so on. And I guess that's probably, perhaps it's going to speed up the process as regards to their appearances before the judge and the decision that they ought to be making and so on. Since all the matters have been heard before the courts, they have appeared 4 times before this particular judge, twice in her chambers, and she was supposed to have concluded and deliberated on the matter and made her conclusion and so on and ruled on the matter. She has not done that. She have indicated to them in her chambers and she was very sorry for what it is they have been going through. She understands, their innocence in this matter. When the matter of the terrorism charges was dropped, and I want to emphatically state it's the media that made it into a terrorism charge. Actually, they were initially charged for attempting to assassinate, the conspiracy to assassinate the president of Venezuela and to destabilize the government. When the matter hits TNT, some of the news reporters, they labeled the whole thing as terrorism and so on. And that's how we were stuck with that whole concept of terrorism. So there was no evidence to convict them of those charges. So that was dropped. And 2 new charges was trumped up against them. Charge of espionage and the intent to commit a crime. Where they got the evidence to come up with those charges, not even the lawyers could have answered that question. But those charges carry a maximum penalty of 3 years in Venezuela. And the men were asked to plead guilty for those charges. We've indicated under no circumstances are we going to allow that to happen. We indicated to the men that they should not plead guilty to a crime that they did not commit. And not only that, what would have been the repercussions for Trinidad and Tobago having 5 nationals abroad being charged for or being convicted of espionage? Who were they spying on? Why were they spying? Things like that. And the reputation of our country would have affected us negatively. I don't know if the government didn't see through that, but they were being asked to plead guilty, and they would have probably been asked to serve the remainder of their time and then probably reported back to Trinidad and Tobago. We were not going to have any of that, and we could not have trusted the judiciary in Venezuela either, because we have been given many promises in the past. The judge herself has been promising to free these men, to deliberate on this and give a conclusion, and she hasn't come forth doing that as yet. And we are still waiting on the judiciary, the same judiciary that our foreign minister says that it's free and fair. We are saying no. Judging from that document that was released by the United States Department of State Human Rights Report that indicated that there is no judicial process in Venezuela. It echoed the very same sentiments that we have been talking about from the very start. Imagine you can pay for somebody's released in Venezuela. Judges who deliberate on matters and they arrive at their verdict and so on, they are sometimes jailed for the decisions that they make. Lawyers have been jailed in Venezuela for the very same reason. So when you see these things happening in a country, of course, you cannot say and you cannot, attest to the fact that, there is judicial process in a country like this. So we have been clamoring and asking the government to do what is right and bring these men back home safely to their country and reunite them with their families.
What is communication like with the men?
Well, we have visits on Thursdays and Saturdays. You actually have to send someone from Trinidad to go into Venezuela to make that visit, to hear what is happening from them and so on. We are communicating with the lawyers. We're getting information from the lawyers as to their status, what is happening and so on. The latest, like I said, they are waiting on this doctor to come and visit them from the tribunal. And hopefully, I don't know if things is going to progress or move forward. They are agitating in Venezuela a response from the authorities there, and we too likewise are agitating for a response from our Prime Minister.
I'm wondering looking in terms of, we're hearing what it is going on with the gentleman. On the side of the families, how are the families in this situation?
Well, you can well imagine the wives, the children, how much they have suffered through this whole ordeal. Recently I had the task of trying to get one of the young boys in a school in Trinidad here, and every school that we would have gone to, he would have been refused entry to that school because of the fact his father is incarcerated in Venezuela, and this whole hype about terrorism and all these things, and they just don't want the child in the school. Eventually we had to pay a private school to to school this boy, and transportation wise it's very, very difficult because they live in the part of Princestown and they have to go to Shoguanas every day, back and forth. That's extremely difficult for a young boy, for a mother who's trying, who's struggling, she doesn't have an income. And that's just one of the families. The other families as well, they're suffering as well. These men are the sole breadwinners of their homes. Think about what you're doing with these families, the psychological fallout of this, and how much hate would these children grow up with, especially knowing the fact that the young boy wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. The mother wrote a letter to the Prime Minister. We have not gotten any response regarding those letters. What's a simple acknowledgement saying that you had received the letter and the matter is being looked into? How about inviting the families or coming and meeting the families and explaining to them exactly what is happening, what they're going through? We've had the Prime Minister make those pronouncements in May after the visit of Maduro, indicating that an agreement was reached where there would be repatriation of prisoners. We have not seen that come into light as yet. What is going on with that? We need to understand that. We have seen, $27 million worth in food supplies have gone across our borders already. So the Venezuelans, they're starting to fill their tummies, and they're starting to place smiles on their faces. What about these families? What about the families of these men? What are we doing?
And with that in mind, I want to bring the Imam in and ask, is looking from the outside in, is there something that we are missing with regard to all the points that Mr. Abdullah just outlined in terms of like talks and negotiations have started? What is it that we're not seeing that we can bring these men across?
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In the name of Allah, the Beneficent and the Merciful, and I greet you with the greetings of peace. Assalamu alaikum. Before I answer that question, I would like Mr. Abdullah to give you an update of what the latest is, and then I would be able to respond.
All right. Well, like I said, they are on this hunger strike, and the latest developments as regards to any response coming from the Prime Minister. A reporter from CNC3 Auto Quarantine did indeed call the Prime Minister to answer to these comments that we have been making and these calls that we have been calling. and he directed him to the foreign minister, who indicated that, you know, we have to wait in due process. So again, we are asking, based on this report that has come out of America, human rights report on Venezuela, if you look at the executive summary alone, it will outline everything that we have been saying. Judges have been jailed. You know, you have to pay lots of money in bribery, you know, to have people freed in Venezuela. Just recently, one of the biggest drug, you know, pharmaceutical company in Venezuela, the owner was jailed in Venezuela. He paid a sum of money to have himself released. There's another individual who paid $5,000 to be released. I mean, these things are happening every day in Venezuela. What about the fate of our men? So basically, that's the latest in response from the government, you know, as regards to this. What we are saying is that this document is out in the open, and as the foreign minister of a country, you're supposed to have that document first in hand, because you're dealing with Venezuela. You're dealing in that capacity with Venezuela. So you ought to have all the reports that is coming in from different agencies all over the world about countries that you're dealing with, and this is how you be guided properly in how it is you continue dealing with that country and how it is you continue moving forward with that country.
So in terms of having that, the updates or the latest developments, if you could carry us back, please, and just remind us the original context of why the gentlemen were actually in Venezuela.
But they had gone to Venezuela to seek visas to go to perform Umrah, which is the lesser Hajj in Mecca. Whilst they were there, we had the civil unrest in Venezuela. Things were really bad. The university students were out in the streets. The opposition were out in the streets protesting, you know, what have you. On a normal day in Venezuela, on every street corner there's the riot police in full gear on a normal day. All right, so you could well imagine for the situation that was taking place. And the airlines was shut down. So you could not have gone to the airline and purchased a ticket to go to the embassy to get your visas, because you have to have a ticket in hand. And because of that, our individuals there were stuck in Venezuela with that situation. There were no flights leaving Venezuela and that sort of thing. So the period of time that they were there waiting for the airlines to start back operation at the hotel, the immigration department was called in. The immigration went to the hotel. When they got there, because of the state of unrest in the country, what they saw, they called in the police because it's Muslims, women and children. You know, everybody in Trinidad and Tobago has 2 cell phones, you know, laptops, you know, what have you, all these things. Monies, of course, they would have monies because they would have to have monies to purchase these tickets, you know, and it's not a cheap thing to actually go to Umrah, right? It's a lot of money. So when the police was called in, 7 came and they made a sweep of the hotel. They found an opposition member who they were after staying in that hotel, and Rodriguez Torres, who was the head of the 7 at the time, told Maduro that he had uncovered a plot to assassinate him and destabilize the government because he had linked the opposition member with the Muslims at that time. So that is what happened. When they sent for a status update in Trinidad as regards why these individuals in Venezuela, our government at that time, the administration at that time, indicated that these men were involved in a plot to assassinate the Prime Minister, even though that we know was false. And that was a dead matter. That was a dead issue. The guys were released. They were freed of no charges. And why would you want to indicate that to Venezuela at this point in time? Obviously, the next thing is going to happen. They're going to hold them. They're going to lock them up. That's going to raise a serious red flag. And that's how this whole thing all started.
All right, thank you so much. So we actually try to get that a little more insight from you, thanks, Imam, in terms of like this is something that has passed.
I knew the ambassador to Iran, Morteza Tavasoli, because I had worked with some of the Iranians for Question International, and he offered to take me to Iran. And of course, we were taken to Iran. We were the guest of Ayatollah Khomeini in Iran. And I met a lot of influential people, and I was able to introduce them to the Chavez government. Also, they asked me about Libya because I told them I worked there, and I told them, well, yes, I am familiar with Gaddafi and I can arrange a meeting. And I did arrange a meeting, and Chavez did meet with Muammar Gaddafi. So we had this good relationship, you know, and I want to thank Mr. Rowley, the Honorable Prime Minister, and by extension the government of Trinidad and Tobago for maintaining this long-standing good relationship we've had with our nearest neighbor. Jesus, peace be upon him, says, love thy neighbor as thyself. And geographically, that is our nearest neighbor. And it was very heartening to see the response of Mr. Rowley and his government when our neighbor found themselves in difficulty, to do a kind of quid pro quo. You know, they will give us $50 million in petroleum or whatever, gas, and we will in turn send food for them which they need. And that was a very, very, very good thing, and not often we get to congratulate the Prime Minister himself and, of course, by extension, the government for doing that. That relationship we have with Venezuela is extremely important. That is our neighbor next door. More than that, it is reported that we share the same oil veins with Venezuela, and they've never challenged that fate, because if they do, we can't respond to their military, for sure. But Guyana with Exxon just said that they found some in the territorial water, some gas, and they were starting to do things, and immediately Venezuela sent their warship and stopped the operation. Immediately. They had to pull back from whatever the lines were concerned. So it shows you the relationship between us and Venezuela as opposed to the relationship with us and Guyana, or for that matter anybody else. So it is a good thing that we have chosen to continue this good relationship with Venezuela. I could tell you we've been treated very, very, very well in Venezuela, and therefore we have no reason, we have absolutely no reason to want to get rid of Chavez's government, which of course Maduro replaced. I don't know Maduro. He's not a general, and I've never met him, so I don't know him, right? When this matter occurred, I contacted one of the generals who I was very close with, who was moving us around. He and I had a very good rapport, right? And I immediately contacted him, and I told him what the situation was, and he said, give him a day. And the following day, when I contacted him, he told me, okay, you were going to vouch for these people? I said, yes, I am going to vouch for them. He said, okay, they will be released. They will be released. I don't know what happened, but the women and the children were sent up 2 days after, and the men stayed back. I don't know what happened, right? And then the Trinidad government sent somebody there, Kelshol and some other people, and apparently explained to these people, the general who I was dealing with and the other people who they might have been in contact with, I don't know, I was not part of it, that these people who are here were charged, some of them, for a plot, and arrested for a plot to assassinate the present Prime Minister, which was at that time Kamala Bissessa, yeah? And I think that exacerbated the condition, because the release was not supposed to be just the women and the children, but my contact was, okay, let me find out. And the next day when I contacted the general, he said, okay, they will be released. You're going to vouch for them? I said, yes, I'm going to vouch for them. Of course, he knew me, I know him. He knew the relationship we had, you know, with Venezuela. He knew of my involvement, you know, with Iran, the introduction, you know, and Iran has substantial investment now in Venezuela as we speak. Iran is very active, and he knew of my involvement with Libya and the meeting of the two things that I arranged. So I was not a stranger to him, right? So I was surprised when just the women alone came. The women and the children, the 2 days they were here, right? And I don't know what the government, the people who were responsible, but I do know, as a follow-up, that they told these people, look, these are dangerous people. They were arrested for trying to assassinate the Prime Minister of Trinidad and Tobago. And I think that exacerbated the condition that prevented them from coming. Because when I spoke to the general, he said they will be released. It had nothing to do with the women and children alone, right? The Muslim community, like all communities, have problems, because when that happened and they came here, some of the Muslims thought that I should not be involved in this process, right? Because the government is opposed to us. And so, like you say, on the street, we just dress back and say, well, all right, I'll deal with it. And that's what happened until, well, recently, I would say for reasons that are religious, that Muslim is a brother to a Muslim, I thought that I should, again, do whatever I can. So last week there was a press conference, and then today we're trying to follow up a little bit to see if we could do something to, because it is on record, Mr. Rowley said that he will arrange for the exchange of is that correct? Yes. And also it is on record that he said he will do the trade, and since then we have sent about $27 million in food. Me, you know, these days it's so much who's saying what and who's saying what. I would like to say categorically today that I believe Mr. Rowley, right? I believe that if he say he will do something, he will do it.